All right, guys, welcome to my channel, Finance with Frank. So we'll be talking a little bit about personal finance today. We're gonna kind of keep it as like a high-level overview for the topics, and I hope eventually I'll get into a little bit more depth for each of these topics. But I kind of just wanted to start with like a baseline um, of personal finance. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about me and tell you like why I'm interested in this, like what I know, so you know that I'm not just saying a bunch of nonsense. I'm talking about debt repayment, having an emergency fund, employer matches, Roth IRA, and other investment accounts. So this is kind of like the order that you should really focus on when you're trying to think of like how to allocate your money and what order to really think about it. So a little bit about me. I'm from Long Island, New York. I'm a 21-year-old grad student at Fairfield University in Connecticut. I'm doing my master's in accounting, and I graduated with my bachelor's from Fairfield as well. I'm a future tax accountant. I'll be working in New York City with a accounting firm. I minored in finance. I actually wanted to be a financial advisor before I wanted to be an accountant. In high school, finance really always interested in me, and I wanted to be a financial advisor. But then I heard about like their fees and how they always kind of sell people on things. I didn't really feel that was very genuine. I kind of wanted to like, do something where didn't seem like that fishy. So yeah, I chose being an accountant instead, but I still follow finance. I still use it in my life, obviously. I built my own budget in Excel. So I practice what I preach. You know, I like to find new ways to, think about finances. And let's go into kind of your first thing you should really think about is paying off high interest debt. If you have some extra money, because this kind of compounds. Like some people might think, oh, I have debt, but I'll just invest this money and pay it off eventually with that money. But if you're investing at say like an 8 to 10% rate of return, but your credit card is charging you 24% interest rate, that's the interest rate on the credit card is going to grow more than your money in the stock market. Right? So basically paying off, let's say, a 24% interest rate credit card is essentially the same thing as investing and getting a 24% return, which usually doesn't happen. So you should probably pay off that credit card. There's some other personal loans, like maybe a car loan, if you take out like home equity loan. Student loans usually tend to be a little bit lower, but still that's a pretty important thing. If you maybe like a time like right now where the stock market is kind of overvalued, you might look to repay debt and kind of get that interest, that guaranteed interest rate, rather than investing and risking, a downturn, say 20% in the stock market. So paying that off prevents, large amounts of interest from piling up. As I said, it's the most important step. That's why it's, first. It's a guaranteed rate of return. And, having like student loans, if they're lower in interest, or a mortgage, if you didn't get a mortgage recently and you got like 2-3% mortgage, probably should just keep paying that regular payments and leave that for now. But if you got one recently and it's like 6%, you should probably, you could think about refinancing. But mortgages in general, you really kind of want to keep that, unless, I don't know, for some reason you got a super high interest rate. But in that case, you wouldn't really pay it down. You would just refinance. Next, talk about an emergency fund. So after debt repayment, you really want to make sure you have this down. And it depends. Most people are fine with 3 to 6 months of expenses, just in case, in case you get laid off, in case something breaks, like, I don't know, you get a car accident, maybe there's like a small fire, you lose something, maybe a roof gets hit by a tree or something. It depends on your, occupation or lifestyle. Maybe if you have a job that's not very sustainable or, safe, you might want to save, 6 to 12 months or something like that instead of 3 to 6. If you have a safer job, maybe you're good with your money in other aspects. you could save only 3 months worth of expenses. You should keep this money in a savings account. We'll talk about this in other investments as well, but having your money in a savings account rather than a checking account is actually very important, because checking account you get basically no interest, and savings account you get 3 to 4% interest depending on your account. Next, we'll talk about employer matches, which is basically free money. So we like free money here. 401k match. Some companies do HSAs and FSAs, which is a health savings account, and so free money. Usually it's like a percentage of your paycheck, right? So if you put away, 3% from your paycheck directly to your 401k, they'll match that amount. Obviously, you can still go over and contribute more than what they match, but one of your first steps should be getting this, because that's free money on the table, and you don't want to leave that there. Not all jobs offer these, so it's kind of why it's a little bit lower on the rankings, but if you have the opportunity, you should definitely take that. Roth IRA. So this is a tax advantage account. Basically, you earn money from your job, you pay taxes on it, right, at the end of the year, and you can use the money you earned from your job and put it to an investment account called a Roth IRA. And when you get up to, I believe it's 59 and a half years old, you can take that money out when you retire, or maybe a little before you retire if you're retiring after then. And that money is tax-free. All the compound interest you earn, you don't have to pay any tax on that. So it's, a very good account, especially if you're younger, you have time for that to build. It's very, it's a very good account to have. So, you're going to have post-tax money deposited, and you'll have a tax-free withdrawal. It's more important, like this kind of, also why it's good to invest when you're young, because you're getting taxed originally on the money, which is different than like a 401k, which we'll talk about a little bit as well later, and a traditional IRA. But you're getting taxed at a lower tax bracket when you're younger, most likely. So you'd rather be taxed now and invest that money than just invest it and take a tax deduction, but then you take it out when the money's grown and have to pay tax on that, which would not be very fun. As of now in 2025, the limit is $7,000. I believe it's going up to $7,500 next year. And there are extra contribution. So if you're 50 or older, you can do an extra $1,000. So it'd be $8,000, or next year it'd be $8,500. So we'll talk about other investments. Brokerage account. Usually it's just like a regular investment account. You buy ETFs, stocks. Maybe you can buy gold if you want. Not really much to say there for gold, but that's just kind of basic. There aren't really any tax implications there. Like, you have capital gains, whether it's long-term or short-term, depends on if it's a year or more held. Traditional IRA is different than the Roth IRA. So basically, traditional IRA, you earn the money, right? And then you invest it in the IRA, and you can deduct your gross income minus the amount you contributed to the IRA. So you're taxed less now, but when you take the money out in the future, you're taxed on the growth from that account. So you'll have a higher tax bill then. Reason why people might do that is because if you're earning a lot of money now, you don't want to, pay the high tax rate now. And in the future, when you take the money out, if you're not working or you're getting paid less, you'll be at a lower tax bracket. So you'll pay, less in taxes, or pay a less percentage in taxes. 401k, we talked a little bit about already. So that's usually through an employer. It works similar to an IRA, where you can take that deduction now, but then you have to pay tax on it in the future when you withdraw. The HSA and FSA work similar to kind of like a Roth IRA a little bit, but where it's tax beneficial to put money in there, because you can use that. You can either use the money from your health savings account to spend on, health, like medical items, or you could save that money and kind of just let your investment grow inside of that account. And then eventually you can actually take money out of that account tax-free, like the Roth IRA, which maybe I'll talk about that in another video if you guys want. High yield savings, we talked a little about earlier. So it's important to make sure you invest in your savings account. It's a high yield savings. So I have savings account with CIT Bank. I believe it's about 4.3% when I started. I think it's maybe just 4% now, or 3.8. But I also have a savings account with Capital One, which is where I have my checking account. The reason why I have two savings accounts is because I chose CIT because they have a higher rate, but I wanted to keep the Capital One account because the rate for the high yield savings was pretty good there. Still, it was like 0.5% less than CIT. But if I needed to make a quick transfer from my savings in Capital One to my checking in Capital One, I can do that. And if I didn't have that savings in Capital One, then I'd have to wait potentially a couple days before I get the transfer from CIT to Capital One in my checking. So that's kind of a bit why you would want, more reasoning why you would want two savings accounts, at least. I don't really see why you would need more, unless you kind of want to have an account just dedicated to something, if that helps you, right? Let's say you open an account and you're I want to save $50 a week, and eventually I'll buy myself a new laptop or something. If you need that to help you save, maybe that's worth it. And then lastly, kind of like what I just talked about, having goals to help keep you on track. They're very important, right? If you mark important milestones in your journey, reward yourself. If you're keeping yourself determined, stay motivated, you're doing what you have to do. Maybe you can buy something, you can treat yourself, right? Setting a goal beforehand as well helps determine what level of risk and return you need from your investments. Let's say you're young, you're saving for retirement, right? You have a long horizon. You can invest more into stocks now than someone who's 60 and about to retire in a couple of years, right? Maybe they want to invest more in bonds, play it safe because they already amassed a lot of money in their account, right? So that's kind of where you kind of weigh the return that you need with the potential risks that go into earning that return. And with that, I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm looking forward to talking more about different topics that we discussed here, maybe in more depth. Or if you guys have any questions, we could talk more about stocks as well. But yeah, thank you guys. Have a good one.